It's nice to see such a crowd of people for community cats on the second and almost lunchtime day of the conference. You guys all hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So there's been a lot of modeling work going on for a while, and it's like everybody hears modeling and math and numbers, and they go blah, 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 ginger, blah, blah, blah. Some of you are old enough to remember that Larson cartoon. But I just want to get a sense of what everybody here is working on. So just throw up your hands if you guys are doing trap assistance, trapping, holding. Okay. Doing advice on how to do TNR efficiently. All right. Who's working on ongoing monitoring of cats? Once you've done it, you're still sort of keeping track. There's one. Cool. A few. Thank you. A lot of spay-neuter surgery people here? Okay. Anybody able to do some flexible scheduling? I shouldn't even ask this now, but I will. Thank you, because I know nobody can hire veterinarians. And is anybody doing things beyond the basics, ear tip, vaccines, stuff for community cats? All right, so this is a very busy, active, involved group. Cool. All right, so I'm going to talk about a couple of different things that have gone on lately that have really come together to make our ability to know what's going on with community cats and intervene more strategically possible. And the first is this Alliance for Contraception in Cats and Dogs. If you don't know about them, you should go to their website. That's where you find out about all things non-surgical for potential contraception. And there is a possible cat product that's probably still 5 to 10 years out, but that's really promising. And this was a big group, interdisciplinary, cross-organizational, and started quite a long time ago. And we've come up with 3 papers that are all published, a couple of which are listed at the end. I've got, my slides are up there, there's references there, so you can find them. And most or all of them are open access, so you can also find them. And there's also a really nice guidance document about what the heck does that all mean that's written down on the ACC&D website. So it's a good place to go. So just one of the points that I want to make is, we know a lot about individual cats and individual cat welfare, and we're quite comfortable with the idea that sterilization improves individual cat welfare. But when we start talking about groups of cats, it suddenly gets sort of exponentially more complicated, because there's these other kinds of factors that happen that influence what's going on. It's things like what's the density of cats? How many cats are in per square whatever? What's the birth rate? What's the mortality rate? And which population is the mortality rate highest? Is it the kittens? Is it the elderly? Is it the young boys who are out roaming and getting hit by cars? What's the carrying capacity? And this was one that I really hadn't thought much about, and I'll talk more about it in a bit, because it's really important. It's the reason we're not hip deep in cats. And it's a concept, most of this is brought over from the wildlife world, where they do sort of small and large mammal and other species population modeling. But there's all kinds of things that you have to take into account when you're looking at multiple animals that you don't necessarily have to think about when you're talking about individual animals. And that's why this kind of modeling and this kind of concept of, well, we can't just take what we know about one cat and extrapolate it to multiple cats is important to think about. So this is just a very quick summary of the kind of thing that we did when we modeled. So the model that I'm going to talk about started with about 50 cats, and half male, half female. That's what this is. That's where we started. And then you apply the birth rate. That means that we go, okay, how many of those cats are going to breed and how many kittens are going to be produced? And then you go and you say, okay, now that the kittens are born, what's the death rate? What's the mortality for the kittens and the adults? And then the computer goes, okay, what happens next? Well, we know that some of the boys are going to migrate out as they mature. Occasionally there's going to be some cats who are abandoned, both boys and girls. And then there's the management if we're doing something. So of course in many places nothing's happening, but in some places there's trap-neuter-return happening. There might be removal for adoption or euthanasia, and that's that whatever intervention we're doing is happening. And then you're at the end of that stage. And for the models that we worked on, we did this in 6-month chunks. So all this would play out for 6 months, and the computer would take care of tracking all that for us. And we ran it over a 10-year timeline. So that's kind of what you'll see, the various graphs and illustrations that I'm going to share. Look at that. And that's what it was. I didn't do the modeling. We have an expert who actually does modeling of endangered species all over the world working on this with us, so that was awesome. But that's what this is all about. And that's really all you need to know about the modeling to sort of understand what's going on. Is we have these series of, we call them parameters, but they're sort of stages and pieces of information that we apply at different times, and the computer helps us track all that, and that's where we come up with our answers. So this is yet just a different way, because thinking about populations is so complicated. I kind of like the bathtub. So the bathtub contains the water, which is the population. So think of this as a bunch of cats in here. And this line where the water is the carrying capacity. And that's the maximum number of cats that can successfully survive in a given location. Now, that might be a colony or group. We've gotten away from talking about colonies, but a group. It might be a park, it might be a city, it might be the country. You can define this in whatever way you like. Usually, for our purposes, it's much easier to think about it in smaller groups, but it's also partly determined biologically by how easy it is for cats to get from one area to another. So if you're in kind of an isolated area, or you know that the cats kind of hang in one place, then that's kind of a nice population to think about. One of the really interesting things that the wildlife people brought to us is this, what they call doomed surplus. And this is right at carrying capacity, and some of these are cats who we know are born only to die. It's like, think about it, when you think about rabbits. Rabbits produce like rabbits, and there's lots and lots of baby rabbits, and Mother Nature doesn't expect all those rabbits to survive to adulthood. So that's what this is. This is just, in the nature of the beast, some of these critters are not going to survive. But there's also cats who are going to move out, the emigrants. The sources of cats are up here, that's the faucet, and those are reproduction, which cats, as we know, are really good at, and then cats who move in from immigration, and cats who might be abandoned. Now, when we're doing management, we might want to be below carrying capacity. We might want to go from this full tub to maybe half a tub, or even a quarter of a tub, and that's what we're aiming at when we apply our TNR or our removal, whatever we're looking at. And then cats leave, the other way cats leave the population is through death or removal. And so this is just another visualization for this, for people who are sort of didn't like the circle on the previous slide, to help you think about these populations and to illustrate that they're more complex than individual cats. And this light is really hot. Woo! So many of you have seen this pyramid, which assumes that every cat is successfully reproducing and that all their kittens survive. And this is what happens if there's something called exponential growth, which is this curve up here for those of you who like this kind of distribution. That's not real. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen with cats, and it doesn't happen in the wild. If it did, we would literally be hip deep in cats, which is why some of us have gotten really kind of like, please don't show this cat pyramid anymore. What really happens is that, yes, there is a period of growth. So this is just when we started with, say, our 50 cats, or say we started with the 2 cats who showed up under the back porch, which you've all heard of, and they're successful at reproducing. And in a year or two, there might be 15 cats. But after a while, they kind of hit that ceiling, and the population stabilizes again. And that's what happens in reality, and that's what happens in our models. So one of the things I just want to talk about is goals. This has become really important in our thinking when we have been doing this modeling, because for many, many years, we've been thinking about individual cat welfare, which is a good thing to think about. But I'm a veterinary epidemiologist, and one of the things we think about is populations. And that's that aggregate idea. And maybe many people who work in shelters also think a lot about populations. There's that individual animal, but there's also the shelter population. How do we keep everybody in the shelter happy and healthy? How do we do what's best for the most animals? And so the goal that I'm talking about here primarily, and the goal that we've been really trying to think about the most at the ASPCA, is to decrease the population. So it's not just to alter a cat here or there and make their welfare better, but to do it in such a way that there's a good likelihood that over time the numbers of cats in that location are going to go down. That's a good thing because those cats who are altered are going to be in better health because we've altered them, the individuals. But it also decreases these other systemic things that we hear everybody complain about. It decreases the nuisance complaints. It decreases the wildlife and public health issues. When there's fewer cats, there's just less impact. It decreases concerns about the welfare of the remaining cats because there's fewer cats and they're all fixed. There are trade-offs in moving from an individual cat thinking frame to a what's good for the population, but I'm going to be focused here primarily on what's good for the population. So carrying capacity, I've talked about a couple times already, but what drives it? And what drives it is resources. In cats, food is a biggie, and you've probably seen pictures of tropical islands with lots of cats when the fishing boats come in. If there's lots of food, and in urban environments they tend to be at much higher densities because there's lots of food and there's lots of buildings and places to have kittens. So that is also important. Where are safe places to give birth and rear kittens? But also what kind of shelter, particularly in northern climates, they need some kind of protection. And then there's other things that impact it. If they're in an area with lots of coyotes, populations are going to be different than if there aren't coyotes. And there's human interventions. If there's somebody in a neighborhood who really isn't into cats and keeps calling for cats to be removed, the population, the carrying capacity of that neighborhood where that person lives is going to be lower because their tolerance for more cats is lower. Infectious diseases. When cats are at high densities, it's much easier for an infectious disease to come through and wipe out half the kittens. So those things are factors. Also, you get things like hurricanes and disasters, fires, floods, which we see all too often. Those things can change the carrying capacity, the number of cats that can successfully survive in a given location. And we all know situations where you start with just one cat and you end up with a whole bunch of cats, and that makes people uncomfortable with the idea that there really is a finite number of cats that can do well in a location. But eventually, even in your backyard, somebody, that's how most people get involved in TNR, I think, they started feeding 2 cats and they ended up with 10 or 15 or 20 cats, and they went, oh my God, what do I do now? And so that's how people create a carrying capacity in their backyard. Either their neighbors start to complain or the cat population density goes up and they get a respiratory outbreak or something like that. So I just want to talk a little bit about what does this look like. And again, I'm thinking about it. We've called it all different things. We've called it intensive TNR. We've called it strategic TNR. But the idea is that we're trying to do this to decrease the population. And I want to provide a sort of visual conceptual idea that hopefully resonates with your gut, because all this stuff is kind of hard to get your head wrapped around sometimes. So I said in our model we had 50 cats. I put 25 cats on here just because that's what fit on the slide. But everything I'm going to say is true for bigger numbers of cats. So say it's a backyard or an alley, it's a park, a neighborhood, whatever it is. You got 25 cats, half are boys, half are girls, and they're all intact. That's what we're going to start with. Now, if we're doing strategic or intensive TNR, that means from our models that what we want to do is about 3/4 of the cats every 6 months. If we do it at that level of intensity, then the modeling tells us that over time, in our 10-year period, the numbers of cats will go down by about half, even if there's some immigration and some abandonment. And what that looks like is, well, we had 25 cats, we got in there, we did some mass trapping, which is our friend whenever we can do it. That's 19 cats. Those are the pink cats who are now altered. There's that blue cat sneaking in. He's the boy from down the road who moved in. And the second 6 months, we got another purple cat at the top. So, we acknowledge that there's cats who can show up. They might be abandoned. They might be lost. They might be just cats who are looking to move to greener grass. But if we do 3/4 of the remaining cats, well, those are the purple cats. That's another 6 cats. And now you'll notice that there's really only 2 intact cats left. So intuitively, while yes, we know those 2 cats, especially if they're both girls, and there's a boy who wanders in and out, could make a lot of kittens, they're going to make a lot fewer kittens than if there were lots of intact cats. And you can get to this point if you're strategic in how you think about this and you really front load your work and you get in there and you do or work with teams that do mass trapping and get there. And then you move into the maintenance, and I'll talk a little bit more about that and why the maintenance and the monitoring is going to be important. The main thing here is to contrast it with lower intensity. So this starts out with the same 25 black cats who are all intact. Now, instead of doing that 3/4 of the cats, you really get in there and try and get all the cats you can get in the first 6 months, or the first block of time you have, you're only doing a few of them. You're doing 25%, you're doing 10%, you're doing whatever. It's 6 cats. It's a much smaller number, much smaller proportion of cats. And you see here right away that instead of that big block of pink cats, where most of the cats were already neutered by the time you did your first wave, there's only a handful of cats who are altered now. So you're not really going to have a big impact on how many kittens are going to be produced. Yes, those individual cats have better welfare because they're altered. But the group is still going to be pumping out quite a lot of kittens. And you still get a couple of new cats coming in, and you do another 25% of the cats, and that's 5 cats. But you still have like half the number of cats are still intact. And so that population is still going to be able to get back up pretty quickly. And what happens is it actually makes you have just as much work or more work. So I'll show you this in a minute, the relative costs of doing it intensively versus lower. So what happens long term when you model this is that these populations where you're doing a much lower percentage of cats each time decreases the population much, much less. There's a very small decline in population. So if your goal is to get the population as small as possible, as quickly as possible, then you want to be really intensive up front and front load these cats. If you only have a little bit of time and money and you're just sort of picking away at it over time, you're going to end up handling a lot of animals anyway, and you're not going to decrease the population. And I'll show you some stuff. So these are the 2 more recent articles. The top one is the one that looks at kittens born and dying. And I'll show you the key graphic from that. The second one is the one that talks a lot about cost. I'm not going to talk a lot about cost in this presentation, but we did get some costs for trapping, costs for sterilization, costs for euthanasia and holding from organizations around the country, and rolled that in here. And all of that is presented in gory detail in this second paper. So this one was one of those things that we hadn't really thought about when we started this work, but we started thinking about what must be going on behind the scenes. So what this shows, so this is 10 years, this is our model. We started with 50 cats, and these blue bars are what happens just if you let the model run. Essentially, there's no intervention. And because cats are prolific, the question is how many kittens get born over that 10-year period as part of this just natural cycle of there's a carrying capacity. So they're born, kitten mortality ranges from 25 to 75 or 90%, depending on where you are and what the year is, and if the dogs come in and killed kittens, if you have a respiratory outbreak. So you get, over a 10-year period, you get about 1,100 kittens born when you start with a 50-cat group. It's a lot of kittens. And because kitten mortality is high, the vast majority of those kittens die. That's why we're not keeping cats. If nobody does anything, if you don't pull them out, they die. And even if you start thinking about it and you're like, well, we could get in there and we could pull them out, there's some mortality right in that first few weeks when we can't get them. And then there's some more in the couple of months after that. And then the mortality, we looked at kittens, we said kittens were up to 6 months. So we were looking at an overall 75% mortality of kittens up to 6 months. So in some cases, we could intervene and drop this by removing kittens. Now the lower intensity TNR, and I'll tell you what this FP means in a minute, the lower intensity, that's at 25%. You just go in and you do some here and some there. So the numbers of kittens born is way less than if you do nothing. That's great. There's 300 kittens or so born. But a fair number of those kittens are going to die. And so you still have over 200 kittens being born and dying. This is kind of the uncounted, non-financial cost of letting cats just reproduce and nature take its course, which we hadn't thought about at all. We were like, wow, that was really mind-blowing. And then if you're doing TNR and you're doing it at that 75% where you're really getting in there, you're doing your mass trapping, you're getting nearly all the cats right up front as soon as you can, well, look how few kittens are born, and then very, very, very few kittens die. And if you're thinking about it from the, oh God, we also do foster and adoption, look how few kittens you actually have to think about to put into your foster programs and try and get adopted. You've saved yourself a ton of work by preemptively altering all these kitties. Now these FPs down here, that stands for final population. So at the end of we started with 50 cats, we ran the model for 10 years. The end of 10 years, how many cats were there? Well, for doing nothing, we had 50. And that's because we set our carrying capacity, our max, at 50. And so birth and death rates kind of percolate along. We end up with the same number of cats we started with. If you're looking at low intensity TNR, that 25%, it goes down a little. The average was 38 cats, so it's a little bit smaller than it was to start with, but nothing that's like, whoa, look what we did. But if you go down here and you look at the high intensity, now you ended up with half the cats that you started with. And that, in my mind, or our minds, the group that has been working on this, that feels like it's worth the bang for the buck, because you really are decreasing the population. People have questions at this point? Yes.
I have two questions. The first is it true that you're always assuming a population of 50% males and 50% females?
When we start, yes.
Did you ask?
Sorry, yes. Oh God, I promised I would do this. I know, it's one of those things. So are we assuming that it's always a 50-50 male-female when we start? Yes, it is.
And if your organization's capacity can't reach 75% for high-intensity TNR, could you use gender selection to be more effective at a lower intensity?
Yeah, so the question is, if you couldn't do, like if you had 50 cats and you couldn't get in there and do 75%, could you select out the females selectively? Because it's the females that are driving this. There's always a boy somewhere who's going to wander in and keep them pregnant. So it really is about the girls. And yes, you could. What that doesn't do for you is address all the nuisance issues. And of course, you have to then selectively figure out who you're trapping and moving, who's female versus male. But absolutely, you could do that if that was feasible.
Do you have data or numbers that would give a sense of numerically how that would look?
It's essentially the same. The question is were there data for that? And it's essentially the same thing. You just have to get 3/4 of the girls. Okay. It's the same idea because they're really who's driving the data. Because cats, unlike dogs, where male dogs do eventually get tired, male cats are capable of impregnating a whole lot of cats, right up until their old age, in fact. So the other thing that happens is that this immigration and abandonment thing, the new sources of cats coming in, is just the biggest pain in the tuchus that you can imagine. Because, so our model assumed that every year, every 6 months, 7% came in. So it's sort of, it was like we had 50 cats, so it was like 1 litter. And a boy or 2 every 6 months came in. So not a ton of cats, but some new cats. If you can decrease it, that's what this blue line is. So this is the number you start with. This is the 10-year period of our model. And this is the final population that I mentioned in the last slide. So this is where we were. This is at the intensive TNR. You get down by half. If you can make there be fewer new cats showing up, then you can get the population down much farther. On the flip side, if you're working in an area where there's a lot more abandonment, then all of your efforts don't get you as far. And that, in my mind, is like the untapped frontier. Why are people still abandoning their cats? I have my own theories. I think it's they can't access medical care, they can't access behavioral problems, they're not sure where to take the cat. I think there's a whole series of things that go on, but that's, if you can cut back that abandonment and that migration from nearby areas, that's going to really help you get your numbers under control a lot quicker. So this is just really a little bit about cost. So this follows up on the previous slide where we have the different levels of immigration. This is what the model was. This is the cost in dollars. So this is $14,000 at the top. So this, for the model that I've been talking about, it costs $9,000 or so across the 10 years. where the immigration is pretty modest. If there's more immigration, the price goes up. If there's less, the price goes down. The other interesting thing when we were doing this work is that we did it with and without trapping costs. That's what this blue at the bottom is, where we paid people to trap or we assumed they were volunteer trappers, because we know most trapping is done by volunteers. But we're like, well, what if we paid them? How does that change the total cost? It turns out that the trapping costs are really a small fraction, at least in ours, and you can see in the paper what numbers we use, so you can see how yours are similar or not. But paying somebody to trap these cats is a very small chunk of the total costs across the time horizon. And so for me, that makes me think, geez, if it's a matter of spending a little more money now to hire somebody to do some of these trapping, then in the long run, I can get fewer kittens born, I can get fewer cats in the landscape, and I can do that sooner. And maybe that's worthwhile. This other one in green is a little harder to figure out. So it's the same, what happens across immigration rates at the bottom, and it's still dollars up here. But what it says is, if you start with 50 cats and you end with 25 cats, the downtick is 25 cats. You've gone from 50 to 25, and you've decreased your population by 25 cats. What does it cost to decrease for each of those 25 cats? And that's what this says. So it actually costs you almost twice as much to decrease the population by 1 cat if there's a lot of immigration than the medium level of immigration. So that immigration piece, that new cats coming in through abandonment, through immigration, through whatever mechanism, costs you a lot of money to decrease the population, which means it costs you a lot of work. Yes?
Just a question, with the immigration, with the data, are you assuming that they're unaltered cats coming in?
Yes, the question is, are the immigrants, the new cats, unaltered? And we are assuming that. Correct. Yeah, it's better if they're altered, which is why, no, but it's a really good point, because it means that when you're doing your TNR, and I assume many of you are also doing this, you want to be getting the owned cats as well, because if you can at least get your own cats altered, then yes, they're adding a body, but they're not adding generations afterwards. And we also know that the difference between cat populations of owned and unowned is so fluid, it's tricky to know what's really going to stay in a household and what's going to end up in the community. So what I wanted to do is just give you guys a second to think about what are some of the barriers and maybe some potential solutions for trying to be strategic in doing your TNR, trying to be really intentional and get high levels, front-loaded TNR. So spend a minute talking to whoever's nearby and just think about it, or you're welcome to think to yourself, what are some of the barriers and solutions for this that either you've tried or you'd like to try, or that you've run into, and then we'll be able to chat about them just a little bit. So take just a little bit of time. So, anybody have a barrier or a solution they'd like to share? Okay, right here.
The barrier is the owners, the humans that don't want to trap or don't want to bring them in, or I've even heard, I want kittens. Yeah.
Okay. So the barrier was the owners, and do you mean for the owned cats or the community cats or the unowned cats? Both?
Yeah.
That the humans involved with the cats don't want to trap, can't trap, maybe want kittens in their household, something like that. I've got one over here, and then we'll do one in the back. One over here.
Shortage of veterinarians that can do it.
Shortage of veterinarians. We're going to take that as a given today, but thank you. No, I know, we're in the same boat. We're desperately trying to hire veterinarians. Plug, plug. We're looking for veterinarians in multiple locations. In the back.
That's kind of what I was going to mention was kind of a combination of the two. Like, we find all the time that people are like, oh, I just found a cat, but if we don't have the opportunity to just bring it right to the vet's office. It has
Right.
to be a situation where it's like a
Yeah.
scheduled timed event, and that's not usually ever feasible.
Yeah, so it's sort of a combo of scheduling and access and all of those things. And that's one of the things that we're starting to think about internally is what can we do once we get staff to be able to make it easier for people either people who have a lot of cats, or organizations that are going out and finding large groups of cats, or people who find that one cat, and how can we get them in such a way that it works for us, it works for them, and we can get this taken care of. Yes?
I think food banks for people, because a lot of people who like have colonies, they don't want to fix them because they're kittens, but if you give them a food and educate them more open to it, and they were like, okay, you can do it, you can do something back.
Yeah, so the idea is to share this information via food banks. So you're helping people who are feeding community cats, and that gives you the in to be able to say, look, here's why you should get them altered. And that's kind of why we were so excited to see, it's depressing to see that kitten information. How many kittens get born if you don't do anything? People assume that they're all going to grow up and be healthy and happy, but that's not what happens. And if you can help people understand that kitten mortality is really high, I think what happens reproductively, I think in other species, sometimes the females can't, when there's a scarcity of food, the females can't get pregnant and carry to term. But cats are really good at that. And then it's the little kittens who are the ones who just get in trouble. You know, the queens get really thin and they get really unthrifty, but it's the little kittens who are going to die when resources are scarce or when disease comes around. And maybe that's a way that we can help people understand that that's not the route we want to go. All right, one more and then we're going to move on. Yes?
There's a leash law ordinance in our county.
They've got a leash law. Yep. And so a lot of times you can convince people to either do a pilot for TNR in one location and show them how well it works, or you can, and then you can get an exemption. But yes, the legal pieces of this that are barriers are brutal, and it's one of the things we've been wrestling with. Thanks. Okay, so turning around here and saying, okay, what is it now that all of this boils down to? What can we take home? What can we say are the sort of simple principles? And so I've tried to make it catchy that you can remember them. And the first is time is of the essence. That's that idea that you want to get in there and front load and do as many cats as you can up front, because that's going to be, in the long run, giving the most bang for your buck. Location, location, location. Those of you who have bought and sold houses are familiar with that. Picking a geography that's doable. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. And you're never too old to learn. And that piece rolls into the idea that you need to know who's doing what in the area you're working, or you need to be working with someone who knows that. And you need to be monitoring these cats. And this is where this monitoring thing really becomes important. There's a lot of groups out there that are like, it's really about the trap, the neuter, and the return. And we all know that TNR can mean all kinds of things. It can mean plus adoption. It can mean plus testing. It can mean plus relocation. It can mean all of these things, but trap, neuter, and return. And the ASPCA has always talked about NM, the monitor, TNRM. And when you start looking at these data, it really reinforces the idea that, oh, we need to be keeping an eye on this. If we invest all this upfront energy and time and money into getting these colonies trapped and neutered so that 98%, all but that one little annoying cat you can't catch at the end, if we can get everybody else altered, but then we walk away for 2 years, what's going to happen? We're going to be back where we started from. And we don't want to do that. So that's where this kind of, how can we be more proactive and thoughtful about how do we stay engaged or work with people who stay engaged so that when new cats come in, we can identify them, we can trap them, and we can find the resources to get them neutered. Because that's what's going to keep us from having to start from square one over and over again. So this is a bit of a reiteration, but it was important enough I wanted to remind you of it. So this is a new slide, and this is just the graphic that says this is how many cats you start with. There's 50, and this is the 10 years. And this is the blue is the 75%. That's that intensive, and you get down to half. And here's what the line looks like when you're doing only a few, when you're doing the 25%. It doesn't go down a lot. And this is just the reminder of how many kittens are born only to die in these three different situations, where you're doing nothing, where you're doing some TNR, and where you're doing TNR really intensively. And again, you don't want to have to adopt your way out of this. There's so many Trap-Neuter-Return organizations that end up being adoption organizations, because what do you do with those kittens? And especially since, if they're really little, you can't really neuter and return them. What do you do with the ones that are in between or aren't quite old enough to get their rabies vaccination? Or, there's all of that messiness. So the simplest, cleanest way is to prevent them from being born. So the idea here is get in there, do mass trapping if you possibly can. Try and get, we talk about 75% every 6 months, and people, to me, that sounds really easy. When we started socializing that around the organization, people were a little confused. So the idea here is get in there, do mass trapping, get all the easy cats, get everybody you can get. And if it's a colony or a group of cats where you've done some trapping before, get in there and try and get as many as you can. Then the second 6 months, or the second time you turn your attention to them that year, then you go, okay, which are the ones who are living in people's backyards? Which are the ones where the caregivers were a little reluctant to work with you, blah, 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 blah. You get that next layer, that middle hanging fruit. So you get the low hanging fruit first, then you get the middle hanging fruit. Ideally, you get them all, and with drop traps and creativity, and some of you have trapping whizzes at your command who can trap that last obnoxious cat. You try and get them all. But the idea is if you can get 80 or 90% of the cats total in your group who are always altered, the percentage of cats who are always altered in the area you're looking at, up 80 or 90%, you're going to see this kind of result. And what happens is it ends up being almost the exact same number of cats that you have to trap if you do it at this higher intensity versus at that 25%. And therefore, it costs you about the same. And that's why I keep saying, well, you get more bang for your buck, because it's the same amount of cats, it's the same amount of spay, neuter, and schlepping and doing, but you end up with half the number of cats instead of just maybe 90% of the cats, maybe a 10% drop. It really is the place where you get a good bang for your buck. And this is, we've seen these graphs before, but instead of looking at them from the immigration perspective, how many new cats are coming into your group, this is about how intense your TNR is. So this is the 75%, this is the 25%, and in this particular case we have some stuff in the middle. But this is money, and this is what it costs across the 10 years when you start with 10 cats. And you can see that it costs just about the same no matter how intensive your TNR efforts are. You're not saving money by doing it less intensively, and you're not saving money by doing it more intensively. It costs about the same, and in our estimates, it's about $8,500 across that time. This is that cost per downtick. That's where it says if you're doing it at this low level, to decrease your population by 1 cat, you're actually spending twice as much money than to decrease it by 1 cat, your population by 1 cat, if you're doing this at a more intense level. And that's just to help you think about, how do I justify putting this front-loading, this intensive effort up front to make this happen? Because in the long run, it's going to cost you less to get a population decrease, if that's your goal. And this is just another way to help illustrate that idea. So the red line is the 25%, and this is the number of cats you've sterilized, that you've caught, and that you've trapped and altered and returned. And so sterilize 75%, you go out there that first 6 months and you catch 75% of them, that's 36 cats. And then after that first year or two, there's hardly any cats you have to do. So that's the other thing, is that when you're doing this at the intensive level, yeah, that first year or so, or that first period of time is going to be a lot of work, but after that, you're in maintenance. And there's only a trickle of cats, because the remaining cats are all altered, and you're only catching 75% or 25% of the intact cats. Everybody who's ear-tipped goes back out. And that's partly why, if you read these papers, you'll see also that the costs are very different between trap and remove, because when you remove the cats, everybody who's left is still eligible to be trapped again. They're all intact. And so it costs a lot more to do that. But it also costs more if you're removing them for adoption, because then you have to hold them and you have to alter them and you've done all these things. So there's a lot of things to think about. So for those of you who might be thinking, oh God, we can never do that, one of the things we also want to encourage people to think about is, well, how do I prioritize cats? And it's like, we all know we want to get those girls. If they're pregnant or in heat, and if you only have one spay spot, especially now that spay spots are pretty slim, get the ones who are pregnant or in heat, because you know those are the ones who are going to be popping out babies any minute. Get the problem cats. Are they aggressive or a nuisance? Because you don't want people complaining. Anybody who's sick or injured, they may need euthanasia or they may need some treatment in return. And then again, we've already talked about the importance of the females. You want to have a drop trap? And you can always do this. Part of the thing with TNR is that a lot of people still don't know about it. And I've worked in small town Texas and we've worked in New York City, and we find there's a lot of people who really don't want the cats to be dead. They may not like the cats, but they just want it to be better. And if you can explain to them how TNR is going to make it better, they're going to come in with you. There's always somebody who hates cats, but most people really just want to make it better. They don't want to see the sick, scruffy cats running around. They don't want to see the little pitiful kittens. And so even if you can't do a lot, if you can at least talk to people and explain what this is, you will, every 100 person or so, find somebody who gets really engaged. And you might find somebody who turns into a great trapper. Back when I was doing a lot of work in the Northeast with TNR groups, there were people who were doing trapping as a family activity. They were fostering as a family activity because their kids would do like the grooming and the bathing and stuff of the kittens. And so there's ways to engage people that we might not have thought about. And you can help, if this is a goal for your organization, you can help the community understand why it is that you're not just doing a cat here and a cat there and a cat over there, that really what you're trying to do is decrease the numbers of cats to something that's more sustainable, less problematic, fewer cats. So the geography here, you want a small enough area that you can actually do it. Now this is a pretty big area. This is one of the areas we've been working in. But one of the reasons we picked it is because there's a river on one side, there's a highway on one side, and there weren't a lot of cats coming in over here. And what we found is this is the place where most cats are coming in. So that's sort of the place where we're going to keep an eye on it. But you want to find a place, especially if this idea is kind of new to you or your organization or your community, that you can do. And again, with limited resources, it's like, oh, maybe it's just somebody's backyard because that's all the surgeries I can get. And that's okay. Start somewhere. And start somewhere easy, somewhere where you know people aren't just dumping baskets of cats out, because we said the new cats coming in make your job 15 times harder. Maybe think about, is there an intervention I can do to prevent cats from being abandoned there before I start doing TNR? You want to be able to work with the people in the community. That's where getting to know them or having contacts is so important. I'm sure you've had the experience of, I'm trying to catch cats and somebody just fed them. Sometimes you can still work it with toys or in-heat cat urine litter or catnip, but it's much easier with food. And you want it a place where you can get into and where you can talk with your caregivers. So make your life easy. If you're trying to do something different, pick a spot where you have a high level of success to start with. This is a really simple counting method, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. It is in my slides because there's some more tools out there that I want to share. And then you're never too old to learn. And for this, I really mean the idea of engaging in your community and really knowing people. It's one of the challenges for Trap-Neuter-Return that I don't know anybody who's really mastered is when I talk to folks about how do I get the community involved, there's no quick and easy way to do it, really. It always takes time. You have to figure out who the sort of people are who know everybody, the people who see things, and it just takes time and relationships with the community to do it. Find out where the cats are, find out where people are abandoning cats, find out about adoptions. In many cases, the caretakers are not legally the owners, but they really are attached to their cats. And so is it okay if you have an adoption program? Are they willing to let you adopt the kittens out or the socialized cats? Or is there another organization? Don't dilute the TNR effort. Partner with another organization who's really good at getting kittens and cats adopted. And then you can spend your time with your trappers and trying to get your sterilization surgeries done. And I talked a bit about monitoring already. And what we're recommending, although we're still playing around with this, is that you check in proactively with your caregivers every 3 months, so that you reach out to them somehow, whether you do a text or an email or a phone call, and say, hey, has a new cat come in? And if so, let's get out there, get that cat trapped and altered. Because you don't want to have to start from scratch again. This is just, there's so many cats, there's so much work already. And I think if you can create some relationships with some of the caretakers or with the neighbors, if the caretaker's not someone who can manage this, sometimes they're elderly, sometimes they're less cooperative, are there other people in the community who can work? This is one of the things we're exploring is who can we get to be our network of eyes in the community? Are there kids who ride their bicycles? Are there moms who walk their kids, their strollers? Are there dog walkers who know what's going on? It doesn't have to be the caretaker necessarily. And I wanted to make sure, how many of you have heard about the DC cat count? Okay, so some, great. The rest of you need to know about it. So this is a group that, another very interdisciplinary group from wildlife, from animal welfare, that came together about 4 or 5 years ago. We've done a whole bunch of cat counting in Washington, D.C., but what we did is we took all the wildlife methods, we applied them to cats, and we validated them so that we can tell what's going on when you walk around and count cats. How good is that method? What are the pros and cons? And how do you do it for cats? What works? And so there's all kinds of tools. There's 1,000 things up on the website. We are also, for those of you who are working with people who are a bit reluctant, there's a whole bunch of publications that will be coming out. They're starting to come now that are the scientific underpinnings for the recommendations and the tools that are on here. Those will also be listed on the website. So if you need to say, well, I'm going to do it this way, and somebody from government says, well, that's crazy, you can go, well, actually, here it is. And this whole group, they got multiple $1 million to do this, and they validated it, and it works great. There are also some that you can do this. You can count cats on paper. Totally works. But there's also apps. There's a couple of apps on here. And this is also something where you can do citizen science. You can get kids involved. You can get scouts involved. You can get schools or universities involved. What we've been doing is pairing a more experienced staff member with whoever wants to go. And that way we have people who can train each other and kind of keep an eye on it. Because you do want to standardize how you count the cats. Counting cats every 6 months, every 4 months is a way to know what your population is doing. It's not going to tell you exactly how many cats there are, but if you go through and you count and you go, well, 20% of cats that I saw on this walk in November were ear-tipped. When you go back again in the spring, in April, and now 30% are ear-tipped, that's good. It'd be even better if 70% were ear-tipped. And this is one of the ways that you can get an idea in a larger space if your goals of that front loading are working or not. Because you can monitor the percentage of cats who are ear-tipped, and you can monitor the numbers of kittens that you're seeing. Because the little guys, most people can identify the relatively small ones. You can also look for pregnant cats. You can look for intact cats. There's other things you can do. We use binoculars. And it's a way of understanding trends in the community. So it's a really cool tool. So we talked about some of the barriers. And let's see, we did pretty well on guessing all of these things already. So what are some potential solutions? We have talked about I do actually have solutions. Don't worry. I have some ideas anyway. So what are some solutions? We talked about barriers. What are some solutions?
We usually have mail carriers give us the scoop on different neighborhoods.
Ooh. So we had mail carriers give us the scoop on different neighborhoods. I have not heard that that's an awesome idea. Because especially if they're on foot. In some places they're all in vehicles, but even then, that's a great idea. Yes?
We found that if we tried to go, if the staff go and try to trap, it just ate up a ton of time, and it wasn't always super effective because the cats were so freaked out by a new presence. So I've started doing more like I will go to a site and do kind of an initial assessment, and then work on finding volunteers within that community to do the trapping. And based on the first colony we've kind of done that with, we've seen a huge increase in the number of cats they're able to catch. And they're much more effective than I was.
Great. Yeah, so she's highlighting the idea that bringing in an outsider to trap can be hard for the people and the cats, and that if you can do an assessment and then engage people who are local, they know the area, they know the cats, and they've had much better success at trapping. And in many cases in urban areas, you need to like provide transport and stuff, but that's okay. The trapping's the really time-consuming part, and the part where knowing the cats and where they hang out and who's feeding them is so important. So that's where you have that nice partnership piece. Yes?
We have actually a grant with our county, so we've worked with some of our legislators who have noticed issues in their areas. So we've actually been able to get a grant that pays us, our spay neuter clinic, to be able to have anybody in the county who brings cats in, community cats in, to try and get spay neuter is covered by the county.
Cool. So they've got a grant to cover spay neuter in the county because some of the legislators were seeing issues, and so that's paying for the cost of the surgeries through grants. So one of the things that, the obvious things many of you probably know about already is trap banks. For a lot of people in highly urban areas, places to hold the cats can be really problematic. When we work in New York City, a lot of people don't have a basement or a garage or anywhere to hold the cats either before or after surgery. So figuring out if that's a problem and how you can solve it with a trailer or with someone who does have some space or with a clinic where you can control the climate, something like that is an option. And then figuring out who you can work with. I mean, we were talking at dinner that animal welfare groups have not been the best at working with each other. I don't think TNR groups are necessarily all that much better, but propose a pilot. Say, if we'll do TNR, we'll do the surgery, you'll do the adoption, let's do that for, 10 animals or 1 month or 2 months, and let's try it. Let's sit down and we'll say, here's what we're going to do, here's what our criteria are, try it temporarily and see if you can make it go.
We've had a few citizens, we work with some volunteers that are expert trappers, so we're blessed that we don't have to do that. They bring them to us. We just wish we could do more spays and neuters with the vet time that we do have. But we found the people who were reluctant, and I know this sounds strong-army, and hear me out, oh no, you can't trap my cats, you can't neuter my cats. Oh, those are your cats? Oh yeah, they're my cats, I feed them. Okay, because by our county's laws, if those are your cats, anybody over 4 months must have rabies. So show me your rabies tags and make them your cats, or we can do what we want with them. And again, you don't want to strong arm them and making them think you're taking their cats to kill their cats, because that's bad PR, and it's you don't do that. Let them know what the program is. Let them know they don't have a choice, because you don't need to be arguing with people every time you go out there to trap. That's not conducive to trapping. But let them know what we're doing, and when they start seeing them come back healthy with their ear tips, I mean, it really changes, and pretty soon you have them calling the trapping people themselves and going, hey, we just found some kittens. And it really, like I said, it starts off with kind of strong arming, going, okay, those are your cats, so legally show me they're your cats.
Yep.
Once you get them to realize, oh, crap, then you can educate them and they hear you.
Yeah, so the comment is that, for people who have that big threshold of, no, they're my cats and you can't do anything to them, in their county, it's like, well, if they're your cats, they have to be vaccinated and licensed for rabies. And they're like, oh, well, okay. So then you can kind of sometimes, without being too strong-army, move them along and do them. And then once they see it, then they understand what it's about. You can also sometimes take them, if you have a model colony or some people who are doing it in your community where it's gone really well, you can say, hey, go talk to this person or go see this model colony, and that helps people understand what they're getting themselves into.
Adding to that, like I have a question with problem, a lot of people that say, my cats, I don't want to fix them, so a lot of time I emphasize was like, we do vaccines, the two programs, like disease drive, a lot of people, oh, vaccines are good, like, and they would have mentioned that more, and you like kind of like, and neuter.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of they're using sort of vaccine and disease control as entree to the conversation about neuter. And, cats are usually easier to convince people to alter than dogs because they're so obnoxious when they're intact. So that's the other thing. It's like, yeah, he won't pee on your door so much, and she won't be screaming for 6 months of the year because she's in heat. So there are ways to sort of leverage it depending on people's objections. So I think the main thing is to think about your goals. So we've been stuck in animal welfare for a long time about numbers of surgeries and vouchers, and that's really important, and it's not the only thing we want to think about. Are we trying to make a real change And what does that change? So the proximate is the sterilization rate. But the real thing that you're looking for, based on our goals, is a decrease in population. So you can use a sterilization rate, you can use a percentage of kittens as proxy measurements for that, but really over time, ideally, at least somewhere in your community, you'd like to be able to show the population goes down. Maybe it's complaints going down, maybe that's your goal. But think about your goal. And we often use shelter intakes, euthanasia, complaints. Those are all perfectly reasonable. If those are drivers and those make sense in your community, use them. But think about it. What does that mean? How does that help you prioritize your resources and your efforts? What does that mean for your communication strategies? So I'm going to take 1 minute. I'd like everybody to just think about for 1 minute, what are they going to take home from this talk? What can they use? What's quick and dirty? Are they going to talk to someone? Are they going to try and change something? Are they going to do something? Think about it for 1 minute. What can you take home that's useful? And I won't ask people to share. I'm going to let people keep that one for themselves. But sometimes, we get all excited at the conference, and then we go home and we get swept up in the chaos. And sometimes if you write down or at least think to yourself, okay, what am I going to do with this? That helps us stay on target and bring something back that we really wanted to bring back. The other thing that I'd like is to contact you afterwards and say, hey, were you able to use any of this stuff? And if so, what? And if not, why not? Because I'm trying to better understand how what I'm presenting is or is not really useful to people. So you can email me, you can text me, and I have an orange book down here for the low-tech people. If you want to give me a business card or write your email address down, that's perfectly okay. Because I'd really, and of course, you can also reach out to me if you have questions about this stuff. All right, thanks guys.